You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Omlor, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Omlor International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Business Wealth Impact. Today we have a great guest, Barton Scott, who's a biochemist, inventor, behavioral nutritionist, international speaker, and the founder and CEO of upgradedformulas.com. In 2015, Barton developed a unique industrial process using his background in chemical engineering to produce a new category of minerals called stabilized nanominerals, using a nanoparticle technology that absorbs very easily without the need for normal digestion and at-home hair analysis testing to know which supplements you need to restore the most fundamental nutrient deficiencies in the body quickly and easily. Welcome, Barton.
Hey, thank you. So great to be here with you.
It's great to have you. So we've been trying to get you on the show for a while, and we finally got you on here. I'm super pleased. So tell us a little bit more. Tell us more about this new technology and the story of what led you to discover all this.
So like a lot of things in the health space is really from an absolute need of something that didn't exist, because when we're close to death or someone we're close to is close to death, there's never any more timeliness. There's never any more immediacy. There's never any more, the stakes are high now sort of experience or feeling. And that's where I was. I was in my early 20s and my mom was in her mid 60s. And I realized that her health was really going slowly but surely downhill and then seeming to speed up and speed up. Age, by the way, is an exponential thing. So we're like, oh, I look pretty good for 40, and then 45. It's not linear. The way our minds are constructed is very linear. The way aging happens is very nonlinear. And the thing with her, I realized in retrospect, was that when we finally found some testing that actually showed us what was wrong, the solutions that were presented, this is way after going to the normal traditional route. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you know that doesn't really work for nearly everything. And so, what are your options, right? People are craving certainty. They're craving certainty, right? And that's where we were, right? That we were absolutely there. I also was halfway through a really brutal major, chemical engineering, and I was trying to understand why my memory was just not the way it was. And because of stress and all the studies, but why, I was still eating well. I was still, I wasn't binge drinking every weekend like most college kids. I was doing a lot of things really well, and I was fit, and yet I was still unhealthy. And it seemed like I had the natural intelligence to be able to do it, but I didn't have the energy to power the brain, to power the rest of the body. So that's where sort of the story starts. And then ultimately, what I realized after being a chemical engineer for a while is that we could get these supplements that we're trying to take to help us reverse these deficiencies that we're seeing in hair, actually. So we're using a hair analysis, not blood. We could talk about why blood is just, turns out for deficiencies at least, a really untrustworthy source. Even when you found the right test, getting the supplements to absorb didn't work. So I realized at some point there were a couple things that we could change that drastically influenced the outcome. And that's what we do today.
So interesting. So you're saying you figured out how to let the body absorb those nutrients.
Yeah, exactly. Right. How to really, I think success in anything is listening to what's really going on. And what was going on there is the particle size of a normal supplement was 5 or 8 times larger than a red blood cell. So that meant that the body had to have a really strong digestive system to make that work. Same with, with food, it's a little easier for a couple different reasons, but still, when the body breaks down food, it gets it into a really small particle size that gets into the bloodstream. And that allows for a lot of magic to happen, really.
Right. Okay. So what happened? Did it eventually help your mother? Did you get this technology done in time?
So she passed, but
Oh,
that became a motivating force. And I knew that being at peace with that is totally different than realizing there needed to be a solution.
right. Right. Okay. So when you talk about age being exponential, that's very interesting because people don't really say that much. And it's true.
Mm.
Actually, in French, there's a saying, coup d'âge, which means a hit of age. And basically, that just means that you're going fine. And then all of a sudden, you can see somebody ages like in one hit because it is exponential.
Yeah, well, it's exponential, and then life happens too, right?
Mm.
Any big life event, especially losing someone that close to you, I would say, for any reason, um, is usually pretty. The more I think, the more unexpected, or the longer it's protracted, because what happens there, like what is actually happening at a cellular level there? Well, really simply, what's happening at a cellular level is that your needs are going up in terms of energy, because as you probably experienced, it takes a lot of energy to be stressed.
Hmm.
What stress really is your body's inability to make enough energy for your brain to keep up.
Mm.
So, interestingly, with PTSD, what happens is, let's say there's 10 of us and we're all in a wartime situation, something really bad happens. 7 people may have extreme deficiencies. Those 7 will have PTSD.
Mm.
The ones that don't have deficiencies have the resources to at least likely overcome it, or have a lot more in their favor to overcome it. But what people don't understand, what I'm writing about in the book that should be out later this year, is this connection on how nutrition becomes personality. And literally no one else talks about this or seems to really see it quite this way. So it's a really important aspect, what we're talking about here, of nutrition as a whole, health as a whole. Because one, if you're not testing, you're guessing. And then 2, if you're not using the right test, you're still going to go in a direction that's kind of meaningless. I always ask people, how's it going with whatever you're doing? If they're like, oh, I'm doing this, what do you think about that? I'm like, what do you think about that?
Mm.
Tell me what you think. How's that? If we're talking, it probably didn't go well. You're probably still in the search. That's why, yeah. And that's unfortunate. Like, there are enough other problems in the world, but that's where we are. And why is that? It's, well, the soil is really, really depleted, like way worse than I realized when I started this company.
Mm.
I thought this would be like a 2050 sort of thing where we are now, or hopefully even further out. But I mean, the soil has 40 or 50% of what it had 80 years ago. So it was easier for our grandparents to get pregnant. It was easier for them to be healthy and fit. It was easier for them to not overeat
Mm.
because, well, yeah, of course, you didn't have these highly addictive foods being created by so many billion-dollar corporations, but also the food just generally, when you eat organic and close to nature, if that soil doesn't have the nutrients, it can't give it to you, period,
Right.
right? So, like, what do? Well, what you end up doing is you end up eating more. So you eat more calories in an attempt to, you eat more, you eat 2.5 bananas instead of 1, in an attempt to get what? More potassium
Mhm.
and other nutrients that your body knows is in that, you know, fruit or vegetable or piece of meat or whatever it is, right? Why some people will get cravings suddenly is because the unconscious mind remembers where that nutrient was stored in the past.
Mm.
And it says, let's go there for that. So chocolate
Mhm.
has magnesium in it and chocolate has copper in it. So, you know, when we're looking at, well, why are we sort of, I mean, if we're frank with ourselves, addicted to some of these foods?
Mhm.
It's not really our fault. It's not really in our favor.
Right. What about sugar? We always crave sugar, and I'm pretty sure that that's not good for us.
Oh my God. I mean, that's a different story, though, right? So let's say it depends. Like, if you're craving ice cream, it's probably because you didn't have enough calories and enough protein during the day. Because the body knows that ice cream, yeah, it has sugar, but it has a lot of fat. There's a lot of fat. Use butter and cream typically in every recipe or some version of that. So butter, cream, body knows, hey, I can get those calories and I can prevent starvation. Now, what's actually true is if you're pretty much any American or anyone in a civilized world, you could probably fast for like 20 days on water and minerals, or just water if you had to. Like, you have enough stored body fat. There's no starvation that's going to happen. In fact, the world record for, do you know what the world record for fasting was?
Is it 45 days?
It was 387, I believe.
Days.
Yeah, days. And now this was a morbidly obese person that was supervised, but he was supervised literally just at a clinic where they were giving him only a multivitamin, which also I don't recommend for a lot of different reasons, and water. So he's basically just like getting a placebo and some water.
Okay, that's not to be tried at home, folks.
No, but also just understand the concept. Like, for sure, you can do that. You can and would benefit from fasting if you knew how to do it well and correctly. And yeah, like under supervision / I don't know, learn. Like, that's how anyone that would be supervising you did it. But yeah, you still want to honestly always keep yourself safe, whatever. Yeah.
So what's the solution then? The solution is to get proper analysis, and your company does that with the hair analysis. And then you have also nutritional formulas that are absorbed by the body.
Right. Yeah, so we do a couple different things. We also support people with fertility needs because, especially after COVID, whether someone got just COVID or got a vaccine, the pregnancy rates have really dropped, and they're dropping even more. Like 1 in 4 couples. This is a stat that we know is probably much lower, much higher. But even the CDC thinks that, or has reported that 1 out of 4 couples directly on their website, they're trying to get pregnant can't. And that's like record numbers just by itself. It's also probably probably higher than that, right? Wow. Probably over 25%. And for sure, wherever we are, it's increasing because of soil depletion, which is driven by essentially mining that same crop again and again and again. I mean, if you plant onions for 20 years in a row at extreme dose to the soil, extreme result to the soil, do you really think the onion's going to have much left after, I don't know, 4 or 5 years of the same thing?
Right.
Because we point to that and we go, oh, well, there's germanium in that. Not that most people would know what that is, but like as an example, or the potassium example with magnesium, with bananas, or whatever it is, right? So I know that's kind of bleak. I realize that, but that's the reality.
Well, that's the fact. So is it because they haven't done proper crop rotation, or it was going to get depleted anyway?
No, crop rotation, animals. There's a whole myth around like, oh yeah, like this whole carbon thing and like cows farting. It's like, oof. Wow. Well, people unfortunately know that when they're like putting out some of these claims and starting these agendas, that most people, one, can't do the math, don't know how to actually solve for that themselves, wouldn't know where to look, have no idea to actually, let's see if that number's right, don't have the time. They're just trying to survive, right? And yet then they go around saying like, oh, yeah, I'm eating, this or that. One, we need, it's how the world evolved. Not that every evolutionary process is right on time and optimal yet, because that's what evolution is, right? But the world, the whole Dust Bowl idea, right? That evolved from us not having what? Not having poop from bison and cows fertilizing the soil. And therefore we lost the topsoil because we lost the grass. Because, there's just constant grazing, no rotation, and no fertilization. So you need fertilization, which, there's also carbon capture, if you think of it this way, which I actually haven't even before, but think of it this way, where a cow, if they are fertilizing land,
Mm-hmm.
and then more life grows, which is what carbon capturing.
Mm-hmm.
Just that alone right there, forget about impact for a second and just look at, well, what's the turnover of that? It's like, okay, now we're starting to get to a place where we bust some myths. Now, additionally, as a good friend of mine said when we both spoke at Mind Valley this past summer, he's like, look, I know that we all hear about acreage being cut down and cattle being formed, and I get it. Maybe there can be more optimal places and ways to raise cattle and other and anything in that category.
Mm-hmm.
But think of it like this. And he had some great stats on it that I don't fully remember, but the general premise is, imagine you're clearing land and you're planting avocado trees, or you're clearing, pretty much everyone likes an avocado, right? You're still killing animals and insects and bunnies. And he's like, I don't know about you, but like a bunny probably has the same value of life as a cow. Like, who are we to decide? So just know that, and he had some great stats. He's like, for every acre of walnut trees or every acre of, it's like, we just have to be mindful that most people have a crazy agenda when it's coming from top down. It's like, suddenly we want everyone to eat like these, like, meatless burgers. It's like, well, do you really think that that's carbon neutral or close to it? Or how do you know it's not? Like, really think. Same thing with driving a Prius. I remember like learning years ago, you had to drive a Prius. Guess how many miles before it broke even? 250,000. Because they're mining the lithium from northern China and then putting that in. So, it's just, this is the soil, this is the earth, this is the whole picture of what we're up against and why it's not always easy, but we have to do our best. And part of doing our best short term is just, being healthy, and testing seems to be the only way to actually know what to do.
Right. Okay. So there's always some counter impact from everything. There's always some, and it's true. They don't do that, but then don't do that. But actually, they found a way to recycle all the batteries now from the cars. There was this myth that there's going to be a big pile of batteries, and this guy said, no, I can recycle every single part of those batteries and reuse them for something. So that shattered that myth that I've been hearing lately, that we're going to have a landfill with a bunch of Tesla batteries in it. Okay. So that was the other thing.
I sure hope so.
So that's a new thing that came out. This guy said, no, I'm going to recycle. So that's great news, because I have a Tesla and I was starting to worry about that. I thought, well, wait a minute. Now but we're always creating some other problem, and something squishes out and creates a new thing. So it's true that we have more cattle on the earth now than ever before. Is that true?
Great stat.
I'm pretty sure
don't know.
I read that.
I don't know, but I know we have more farmland than ever before. So when you have more farmland, you need more fertilizer. You know what we're using for fertilizer right now? Something called NPK, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. And if you get food that was just, certainly conventional food, this way, they're using NPK fertilizer, which is just these three elements that are put together as fertilizer. So the food is just, there's not a whole lot there. And that's why you see people, the worse the food is. Back in before World War II, we had some of the best health stats of a developed world. Now we have, I think, probably the worst or close to it. And what's really changed? That's changed, and pharmaceuticals have changed. I guess what I'm saying is, we have some long-term problems to fix, and here's probably why you're not feeling optimal as often as you'd like, or you may be listening to this, and you may be feeling, if you're truthful, you're like, I'm really overweight, and I don't know why. And it may not be it's not. It's hard to say that it's someone's fault when there's that much against them. And some people have even more. I've overcome IBS. I've overcome Hashimoto's. I've overcome a lot of different health issues, mold, heavy metals, parasites, and frankly, probably a lot like just as like most people, the average person's up against at least as much, and they may not even realize it, right? Because we've forgotten how good we can feel. And I think one of the hope inspiring things that I always teach and leave people with is that where you are, when you have the right tools, you can actually reverse these issues. Like you can reverse the deficiencies that if you didn't absorb the supplement well prior, the deficiency stayed and you're kind of, you're in a bind. It was a tough spot to be in. So some things are reversible.
Right. Lots reversible. Lots and lots. My whole thing is most is reversible. And I've also overcome some of those that you mentioned as well. I think that, I don't want to generalize, but some doctors just say, oh, that's just not, you can't do anything for that. Here's some medicine, but that's another whole discussion. So getting back to the, what's the solution is you've created a solution with your products where you can analyze where people are deficient and get them to get the nutrients that are actually delivered. And that's kind of the solution. Well, what's the solution to our food supply then? There is no solution.
It's doing everything. I kind of alluded to it really, but also just making certain things illegal, like glyphosate, which is in Roundup, which is a lot, just enough by itself to give you leaky gut. People like me have not eaten gluten in 15 years, literally 15 years, and yet you can still have leaky gut from glyphosate alone. Just from eating, it's super tough, right? Because even in a health conscious city, you can go out and you go to or even a nice restaurant and you pay $20 for a salad plus like $10 for protein. And you've got salad that is, one, they're literally vaccinating chickens now.
Hasn't that been going on for quite a while?
Yeah. So wild. So there's that, which is a huge, look it up, decide for yourself, and what you want to do about that. And then this is the other key point. The salad's not even organic. And then if you pay to have that salad delivered or plus tip, now you're out like $40 probably just for that in a major city. And it's not even, it's still quote conventional, which I'm just going to start calling garbage and poison, because it literally has poison by default, not someone's opinion. Like as a chemical engineer looking at it, it is poison for your body. It's something you would literally give your enemies if you wanted to weaken them.
Okay, so Roundup, we know that's been bad for a long time because they used to talk about that with the corn crops, right?
Yeah.
But they're using that for all crops. Is that mainly for wheat, corn, or all crops?
So there's a dirty dozen vegetable list that you can look at, and I would say start there. And the truth is we don't really know. We don't know. Well, I mean, if you think you can trust what they say, it's not organic, but it's fine. So
the solution is grow your own stuff, and if you can't, most people can't grow their own stuff. But if you can't grow your own stuff, then at least figure out where you're deficient and get some sort of solution.
Right. Yeah, we trademarked this phrase. We own this trademark for testing that's it just says test, don't guess. Because I realized at some point, even when I would go long intervals, if the intervals weren't tight enough, I was still guessing. I was still supplementing based on recommendations way back then. And then now, 5 months later, you're a different person at that point. Assuming the supplements worked, you probably had life changes. You probably, people start new jobs. They have more energy. They start working out. They sign up for a marathon. They have a kid. They start raising a child. They start breastfeeding. Whatever it is, they take on more responsibility work wise. So your levels are always changing. It's a very dynamic thing, this human experience. So. Yeah. So repeated testing. I wish it was easy as I'm just going to do this once a year. I'm going to be set,
So how much do you test? If somebody is testing with you, what do you recommend?
Quarterly is smart. We we look at business quarterly for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one area that really matters because people lose their jobs if we don't have like full quarterly
Mm-hmm.
reviews in companies, right? Your health should obviously be more important because if you're not alive, it doesn't exist, and some level of like not being alive is just being really unhealthy, right, and not having the energy to do well. I always remind people too that there's a great stat, and it's like if you're the healthier version of you would have made 30% more, 31% more, I believe is a stat, over the course of just a year, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because if like, I don't know, 2 out of the 5 days, you don't have that much energy and you kind of limp through those 2 days in a 5-day work week, you compound that across 10 years, either positively or negatively.
That is profound.
And it's pretty profound. And we just don't seem to.
No, we don't.
Yeah, we don't seem to think of it that way.
Yeah, but I agree with you. And also, not sleeping well, and also actual sick, because I'm rarely sick, but I was sick. Finally, I thought, oh, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
This does make me take a couple of days off where, I'm pretty lucky in that I'm rarely sick. So I take that for granted. You know how you forget. You said you forget how good it is. I feel pretty good every day. So, but most people don't. Most people every day there's something wrong with their health, and it's just part of their life, unless until something really wrong happens. Okay, well, this has been fascinating. So, if anybody wants to find you, they go to upgradedformulas.com, and we will have all the links, and there's some quiz that we'll have also in the show notes, so it's a quiz about their health, right?
Yeah, it's just like 20 questions. Yeah, it takes literally like a minute and a half to fill out. It's just a type form on the website, on the homepage. That's it's kind of like someone asked me like, what questions would you ask if I was sitting in front of one of you, either your people on your team or you, and so we decided to make that, and it's totally free. No matter what you do with the results. So,
and one last question. So you're saying that blood tests really aren't accurate, and it's really what we really should be doing is hair analysis.
Yeah. So, and we'll probably think, if you're listening to this, you probably are like, oh, I either just got blood testing done, or I've been thinking about it because it's been too long since I've done it, and that's all you knew that was available. So I'll explain it really simply, right? So your blood, if you could just picture looking down at your forearm and looking at the blood in your veins. If we were to measure that blood, that would be you at your absolute best. And we don't want you at your absolute best. We want to know the parts of you that are showing weakness first, right? And what that is actually the organs and other tissue in the body. Right. So organs and other tissue in the body are actually showing you the first signs of aging and the first signs of deficiency. So the thing that and you can see a ton of different things. So there's 59 elements that make up the human body. 59. That's it. And then like micro amounts of some of those. Right. Really, really small amounts. In fact, about six of them make up 99% of us. And it's really interesting. That's a quote from like the Royal Society of Chemistry. And it's interesting to think about, because if that's the case, shouldn't we be testing for elements? Not necessarily even hormones, which are downstream of elements. So you improve the elements, you improve hormones. And it turns out when you do that, when you're testing really at the ultimate source in the body, but blood being you at your best, you on your best behavior, as I like to say, it just kind of leads you to go, well, what is the right way to test? And instead of like biopsying your skin, because then we would know how the nutrition is actually in your cells. Blood, a lot of people really don't understand this, but just picture this for a second. what's in your blood doesn't actually make it into the rest of your cells in your body. It can be in the serum, which isn't actually necessarily delivered. But when you look at hair, and I mean like hair short, close to the scalp or the underarm, pubic region, we even do fingernail clippings, toenail clippings, and that goes off to a couple labs that we have. So, and then people get results via email. So you can do it from anywhere. The thing is, like, when you have that, that's obviously become tissue. So it means that it got into the cells, right? Mm-hmm. So if you look at that and you see through an analysis of that little bit of hair that's close to the scalp, obviously it's, well, one, you're not going to take, if you have long hair, you're not going to take the tip ends of your hair. That would be silly. We get that question a lot, and it's like, do you think that we would do something like that? So yeah, obviously, we also have videos and things for people to understand. So yeah, that's why, you're getting tissue, you're getting the actual record of what's been built in the last 6 weeks. So you can do that. And it gives you, because it's over 6 weeks, it gives you per element 1,000 times, roughly 1,000 times more data. So it's like it's like surveying 1,000 people per nutrient versus one person.
Mm-hmm. Right. Oh, wow. Yeah, fascinating. Well, thank you for explaining all that. And again, thank you for being on the show. And I hope everybody enjoyed this, and we'll see you on the next one. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Omlor, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Omlor International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.